There's nobody running the copyright office right now. Ms. Perlmutter got fired, but she actually filed a lawsuit suing President Trump, looking at how the Copyright Office analyzed the whole AI situation. This was a major blow for AI companies to have this report. The cards are starting to fall. There's so much happening here. Do you guys remember we were reporting how the Copyright Office is on fire right now, burning in disarray, and essentially there is a copyright crisis that's happening? So as a refresher, the Copyright Office did a series of reports talking about AI as it relates to copyright. Do you have ownership? What does it look like? And then the final report, part 3, discussed about, well, can you train your AI using copyrighted works, right? Like books and songs. And what are the mechanics around that? Is it fair use? Can companies just do that? Do they need to get permission from you? So anyway, big long report. We did the deep dive on it. One day after this report came out, the head lady in charge, she's called the Register, Shira Perlmutter, got fired. So she gets an email from the White House saying, hey, it's been great having you serve since 2020, but effective immediately, you're fired. And so the response right away had been like, you can't fire me. And in fact, Shira not only said this, but she actually filed a lawsuit suing President Trump. And so she goes, basically, here's why. The White House is part of the executive branch. The executive branch can't fire me because I work for the Copyright Office, which is the legislative branch. So you have literally broken all the rules. You can't fire me, and I am still the Register of Contractors. So she files this complaint, says you did all the bad things, but also I am still the acting register. So she asked the judge in an injunction saying, hey, I need you to basically agree with me. Now the judge came back and the judge said, well, actually, I disagree. And the reason why is because she had to prove this irreparable harm, which is a legal standard. And the judge said, at least at that time, you haven't proven irreparable harm. It doesn't mean our case is done. It doesn't mean the whole thing is over. It just means that as far as that request for the injunction piece, the judge said no. Now she's appealing. Okay, so we'll see if she can get this thing turned around, because she's like, oh no, there definitely is a bad harm that is happening right now to not only me, but I think really part of this claim is she's like, there's stand-in people right now for 2 jobs at the Copyright Office. One of them is for the Register of Contractors, and the stand-in is Paul Perkins, and then the other is actually the librarian who was also fired. Okay, so the stand-in is Todd Blanche, and she goes, basically, these people don't know anything about copyright. They don't know how to run the office, and this whole thing is in complete and total disarray, which of course gets me real nervous as someone who files copyright applications on behalf of you guys. And I'm like, for the hundreds of employees in the Copyright Office, for a time before even we had the stand-in people, we literally were like, there's nobody running the Copyright Office right now. So anyway, back to the original report, right? This was so interesting going through and looking at how the Copyright Office analyzed the whole AI situation, because we go, this was a major blow for AI companies to have this report, which is still, I checked today, it's still in a pre-publication draft. Okay, so it's not the official version. And one of the big things that we had discussed when we first read this before Ms. Perlmutter got fired is that it said, this is basically a draft and it should not change substantially. That was on this draft. And so I go, well, now that the person who wrote it is fired, will the new person who is standing in right now change this? And since this report is a pretty big deal, and it's saying we're looking at these companies that come in, so meaning AI companies, these companies that come in and take creative works like books and songs, paintings, and they do it without authorization. They pirate, they steal, that kind of thing likely is not fair use. And so as the first kind of blow in that we're waiting for whatever it's going to be, the government, case law, and in this case, the most powerful agency when it comes to all things copyright, the actual Copyright Office, comes back and is like, all right, no can do. Pirating, doing the stealing is the piece of this that really is going to make this probably not fair use, right? And then we've now had a couple of rulings in federal cases, because as you guys know, we're also suing music AI companies Suno and Udio. These are class action lawsuits, and we have other cases that are kind of tracking along and that are ahead of us. So in the similar kind of these companies who are blatantly just admitting that they have stolen the creative works, when the Copyright Office came out with this report, literally it was the reason why I called up my friends, with the class action law firm. I'm like, guys, it's so clear to me the Copyright Office itself is saying this. And now we've had some cases like with Anthropic. So the authors, right, that's suing Anthropic for stealing their books. We had a massive decision just last month. And the court said, if you're going to act in bad faith, if you're going to do something bad, it likely is not acting fairly. So it's pretty much not fair use. Okay. Putting it in my own words. But essentially, so as we've just, seeing, the cards are like starting to fall in alignment with the Copyright Office's report here. So, we kind of go back and we go, all right, so, with this case and Shira Perlmutter suing and what's going to happen with her, here was the basis. I think this is important. And I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this. When allegedly, because we went through the complaint together on the channel, but allegedly when they fired her, there was someone who walked in like with a letter and they're handing out this letter, basically being like, she's terminated, we're taking over and all this stuff. And they cited to the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. So basically saying the president, through this Vacancies Reform Act, has the right to replace officials in the executive branches, right? In the executive agency when there's a vacancy. And so this is kind of why Ms. Perlmutter kind of came back and she goes, that's a really important distinction here. Again, legislative branch, executive branch. Her request for an emergency injunction, right? To have the judge actually say, you're okay, you're still the boss. She lost on that, but she is appealing. There's so much happening here. Drop a comment down below. I'll see you on the next one. I'm Top Music Attorney.